Greetings and welcome to another Lessons with Odin. Today I will be showing you how to make these spiffy earrings. This is part of my Frost Drake series, which is part of this magnificent piece here. And as you can see, I've made an earring component out of this tiny thing down here. So yes, I will have a PDF of the full pendant in my Craftsy shop. It's pending right now, but if it's there, I will just leave a link to my entire Craftsy shop so you can see it if it's there. And if it's not there, then pester me on Facebook. And also check out my other tutorials to keep you occupied in the meantime. Also, if you haven't already, follow me on Twitch to see my live beading fails and adventures, and yes, it's a load of fun. We do a lot of things. So I will leave my Twitch down below as well. Feel free to check it out. For this piece, you will need two SS39 Rivoli or chatons, sort of 8 to 10 millimeter stone of some form. So if you have something off-brand, feel free to use that. Now, there is a difference between the chatons and the Rivolis. The issue being here is that the chatons have a pointy back. Now, I'm going to show you one way of attaching the earring bell, but there is the possibility of attaching this and turning it into a stud with a wider based earring component and just gluing it on the back. The issue is you won't be able to do that with the chatons, but the Rivolis should give you a better way of doing that because the backing is flatter and the bezel is a little deeper, so you kind of have room to ram something in there. But I'm going to show you this way because this way is more complicated. At that point, we also need two earring findings. Yes. You will also need 6 6mm Top-Drilled Bicones. You will need 12 Dragonscale Beads. You will need 2 Dagger Beads or some other drop that you like. 4 4mm beads. 20 3mm beads. Size 11 Delicas beads, and size 15 seed beads. And of course, your needle and thread. Let us get started. Now, this technique is also very similar to my spawn pit ring, so if you haven't checked that out and you need extra assistance, feel free to check that out as well. I will leave a link in the description or in the card thingy right meow somewhere. We're going to start off with a basic right angle weave band, and I will show it for those of you who are not familiar with a right angle weave. So what we're going to do is start off by adding on 4 of our Delicas beads, pulling it down, leaving a little bit of a tail, just enough to finish the knot, and work it because we're not going to use it for this project. Next up, we're going to pass back through all 4 Delicas beads to form a loop. So we form a bit of a loop. Now what we're going to do is take the tail ends and the working thread and tie off a knot. Now if you're not too familiar with the right angle weave, I would recommend doing this with size 11 rounds instead of Delicas because it doesn't really form a nice shape in Delicas. They kind of just flop around and do whatever the hell they want. So the 4-shape pattern is not going to be as prevalent while using Delicas. That is what we are looking for. Now I'm going to move a couple of spaces around so that we aren't playing with the knot we just made. There we are. Like that. So now I'm going to continue on our band. I'm going to add on 3 Delicas beads, and pass back through the bead we are coming out of, so that we form a picot on top of it. Like that. If it behaved correctly, it would be a much nicer shape, but it doesn't. Now all I'm going to do is, we are moving in this direction, so I'm going to go up to the anchor point here. So go up 1, and then 2, And we're ready to repeat again. So I'm going to show you one more time. Add on 3 Delica beads, then pass back through the far bead you're coming out of. So you form another set of 4, move up 2 beads, and you are ready to continue your stitch. Repeat this until you have 11 stitches total. An easy way to count is counting the side beads that tells you how many stitches you are currently at. And here I have my band of 11 beads. Now it's ready to join it together for our 12th stitch. What I'm going to do is fold up my bezel so that the very first bead and the very last bead are right next to each other. Pulling my tail thread aside so I don't get confused. Now my thread is coming out of the right side of the last bead. So all I'm going to do is add on one more Delica bead and move to the right side of the first bead that we've added. To kind of start 3 of our circle of 4. To finish off, I'm going to add one more Delica, and I'm coming from the left side of the first bead, so now I'm going to go through the left side of the last bead, which will complete the pattern. Just like that. Now I'm going to reinforce these 4 beads once more because it's always a good idea to do with a joint like this. And that is what our completed band looks like. Now I'm going to move over to one of the top beads here, and I'm going to continue on my bezel with size 15 beads. From here you can also put away your Delicas because we don't need them anymore. We're now going to start off with our size 15 beads, and we're going to form picots on every other one of these top beads on the top round. So from here I'm going to add on 3 size 15 seed beads, and then pass back through the same bead I'm coming out of to form a loop on top of it. Like that. Now I need to move over, skipping this one, to the next top one. So all I'm going to do is go down 1, over 1, on the other side, up 1, and finally over 1. And this is the bead we need to be at. So now I'm going to add on 3 more seed beads. Make another picot by going back through the same bead you started at. Just like that. Going to move over again by going down 1, over 1, up 1, and finally over 1. And this will be the bead we need to be at. Remember that you're always going to have one bead in between 2 picots. So I'll add another one, put on 3 size 15 seed beads, and then pass back through the picot we are at. Repeat this 3 more times so that you have a total of 6 picots. And that is what we end up with. 6 little points on our thing. Now what I'm going to do is from the last picot that I made, I'm going to move up to the point. So I'm going to go up 1, over another. But we're going to introduce our 3mm beads, and what I'm going to do is add 1 of them and pass through the top hole of the next picot over, basically pinching everything together. Like that. Repeat that all the way around until you've completed 6 sets. And that is what we end up with. After that, reinforce by passing through everything once more. Alright, now everything is secure. We're going to work on the back of the bezel and securing the Rivoli in place. So I'm currently at a top bead, size 15. I'm just going to move down, over, down, and over again, so I end up in the very last row of our Delicas here. Like that. Now I'm going to push my Rivoli in, color side down, and the beauty of this bezel is that we don't have to do anything more. All we're going to do is take all 12 of the poking out Delica beads and cinch them together. So from here, I'm just going to pass through all of the Delica beads. There should be 12 total. And as you do this, the bezel will start to cinch together and envelop the little Rivoli trapped inside. Now from this point also, if you have a wider and flat earring component, you can probably take a little dab of glue and put it right on top of the Rivoli and bead this on top of, and trap this on top of the, underneath the Delicas that we are forming right now. Once everything has been attached together, we're also going to reinforce this 2 or 3 times to make sure that backing is really closed tightly on it. And this is also where it would be very tightly closed on top of your flat back. There, your earring finding. And now you can see after a couple of reinforcing rounds, everything is pinched together nicely and that Rivoli is not going anywhere. Now we're going to start working on some of the decorations of our bezel. And we want to kind of look at the top row of Delicas. You'll notice there are 2 kinds here. We have these free floating ones that are in between 2 picots. They kind of just flop around and do whatever the hell they feel like. And then the ones attached to the picots are just kind of flat and covering the bezel. What we want to work on is one of these free floating Delicas. So I'm going to work my way up to the next one. So I'm going to go over 1 because that's where I can fit in the round. So I'm going to go over, up, and then immediately over to that free Delica. Now we begin to introduce the rest of our beads, except for the Dragonscales. I'm going to add on 1 size 15, 1 of my top drills, and 1 size 15. Then I'm going to pass back around the free-floating Delica so that it forms a picot on top. I'm also going to reinforce this once more by passing through them again, because the top drill bead is a little heavy for the thread that I'm going to use. If you're using a heavier thread like Fireline or something, you may not need to do this. I'm just going to quickly reinforce, pass back through the Delica bead I want, And now, from here, I want to end up going downward on this size 15 bead. So I'm just going to pass through once more. I'm just going to go up to 15, through the top drill again, and then down the other 15. So that we have a little bit of a better attachment on top of our free-floating Delica. We're also going to pass through it again and reinforce it once more, but until in the meantime, we're ready to continue. From here, I'm going to add on one 3mm bead and one size 15 bead to our bezel. And what I'm going to do is skip over to the next free-floating Delica here. You can see it is in between two size 15 picos on the front of the bezel. So I'm going to do that. We have one 3mm bead attached and next to the top drill bead. From here, I'm going to add on one size 15, one more top drill, and one size 15. Jump over to the next free-floating Delica on the round. And that is where we are at. Now we're going to add on one size 15, one 3mm, one size 15, one 4mm, one size 15, one 3mm, and finally one size 15. So that is our pattern that we have added. What we're going to do now is skip two of our free beads. So we have this one's attached to a picot. This is our first free bead. This one is attached to a picot. This is our second free bead. We want to go through that one. Basically so that our 4mm bead ends up in the center and in parallel to the top drill right on top. So you want your 4mm across from a top drill bead. From here, we're going to add on one size 15, one top drill, and one size 15. Then we're going to pass up to our next free-floating Delica bead. And if tension permits, we basically have two top drills across from each other. From here, I'm going to add on one size 15, one 3mm, and then pass up through the size 15 seed bead that is right next to the top drill, the very first one that we've added. We're kind of reflecting this positioning here. So I'm going up in that direction. And we've mostly finished our bezel. So what we're going to do now is reinforce the round, but when we get to the 4mm bead, stop so that we can add our dagger. So go ahead and do that. Reinforce everything up to the 4mm bead. Go through the 4mm bead, but stop there. Alright, so here I am at the 4mm bead. I'm going to add on my dagger by adding on 3 size 15 seed beads, then the dagger, and then 3 more size 15 seed beads. That is what we end up with. Now we're going to pass back through the 4mm bead to attach the dagger in place. Then we're going to pass back through these beads once more to reinforce the drop. And I am back through my 4mm bead, and all I can do is continue on to reinforce the other half of the decorations on the bezel. And we are nearly finished. Feel free to reinforce once more if you don't like the tension, but be careful of their 15s. Make sure you don't break them. Now it looks really cute like this, or we can go one step further and adding dragon scales in the front of our bezel. So what I'm going to do is head on over to one of the 3mm beads in the center circle. You can see. So I'm just going to make my way down there. I'm going to have a little bit of a tough time with this 15. So I'm going to use my pliers. Hopefully not pop it out. Yeah. Success. Okay. So I'm going down next to the free Delica. Down here. I'm going to kind of work inside the bezel down here. But don't sweat too much about it. You can end up just cheating and going through some other random beads and kind of hiding the thread, which is basically what I'm going to do. So I eventually want to end up the 15O picot, down the center of one, and through a 3mm bead. So I'm basically going to add a pseudo fringe around the 6 beads in the center. So I'm going to add on one Dragonscale, one size 15, pull it down to the center, and then I'm going to pass back down through the Dragonscale bead. Then pull tight, and it should anchor into a sort of fringy doodly bob. From here, I'm just going to continue on to the next 3mm bead, effectively anchoring it in place. I'm going to repeat that again, adding on one Dragonscale, one size 15, pulling it down, and then passing through the Dragonscale once more, and the next 3mm bead, because killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to repeat that all the way around until we've completed all 6 scales. And that is what we end up with. Now the next step is totally optional, but some may or may not like how much these move on your bezel. And all that requires is just a simple bit of reinforcement. So from a 3mm bead, all I'm going to do is go up a Dragonscale, through the 15, anchoring it once more, back down the Dragonscale, and then back through the next 3mm bead to continue on. Going through the next 3mm bead, and it doesn't waggle as much. Totally optional, up to you, but it's nice to have a little bit more rigidity and a little bit more control over the positioning of the Dragonscales. And that is our finished piece. Kind of reminds me of a spaceship or a little drone thing. It's kind of cute. Anyway, so if you don't already have a thing earring backing glued to the back of your piece, I'm going to show you how to make the little dangly bit. So on this piece, I have made my way back to the free Delica underneath the top drill that is directly above or across the dagger, or however you want to refer it to. Now all I'm going to do is add a small loop between 4 and 6 beads. The more, the easier it will be to get the wire through. 3, 4, 5, 6, but it should be an even number so the wire has somewhere to sit. I'm just going to pass my way back through the Delica bead, anchoring the loop in place, like that. Then I'm going to pass through the beads again to reinforce. And from here, you are okay to end your thread however you like, and also don't forget to end your tail if you haven't done so somewhere in the process. So I'm just going to go through making half hitch knots, because I find that the simplest way to finish a piece off. So from here, all we need is about a 3 or 4 inch length of wire. I like more because I would have easier time handling it. So we're going to start off with a wrapped loop. So I'm going to take some round nose pliers, tilt it back 90 degrees, fold my short end over my first tooth, pull the tooth out, stick the tooth back in, and fold it over. I'm going to stop here and open up the loop a little bit, pull it apart so it separates, and I'm going to slide in the wire through the beaded loop that I had just made. You can also use wire guardians if you'd like, but I couldn't find mine, so this is what I'm doing. From here, you can close the loop again, and then just form a couple of wraps. cut the end short and kind of pinch over the cut end so it doesn't scratch anything. And there's the start. Now what we're going to do is slide on a 4mm bead, pull it down, and then start another loop at the top, stopping just before the point where we add wraps. Like that. And open it up a little bit and separate it again. Then I'm going to take my earring finding, slide that on, like that. Gonna pinch it closed, hold it, and attach my other wraps. That is what we've got. You're gonna maybe have to bend the loops around so that the earring hangs in the direction you want it to. Other than that, your earring is complete. And I think that'll do it for this episode of Lessons with Odin. If there are any other tutorial stitches that you would like me to do, let me know, and I will see what I can do to make that happen. Also, don't forget to check me out on Twitch and see a lot of my beading fails, design works, and adventures. I'll leave a link in the description down below, and also check out some of my craftsy patterns, because they are a lot of fun. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to share me pictures of what you make on Instagram, tag me Odin's Musings, and I would love to see what you do in your color creations. And of course, if there's anything I need to be trying out right now, feel free to leave me a comment down below, and I will see you next time.